Hello, happy holidays, everyone, and welcome to the Varsity Tutors StarCourse series, where we've got astronaut Leland Melvin here, who you probably have seen in some of these classes with us here before. And Leland and I were talking, one of our favorite parts of all these classes is your questions. You guys have some of the most amazing questions. We know Leland has some amazing answers, and so we're going to get started in a second. Today's theme is your astronaut questions answered. You guys have been asking those in emails and on social media posts and through the chat box to the right of your screen there. So please keep using that, and we're going to get as many questions answered for you as possible here. We've got a loose outline to kind of organize them so you guys can remember some of the big takeaways. But one thing I want to make sure you guys know is keep your questions coming throughout. That's the whole theme of today. Exactly. To be ready to answer some of Leland's questions, because it's sort of fun when an astronaut asks you questions, and we're going to do a little bit of that. 3, make sure you've got a camera nearby, because we're going to give everybody a few chances to lean into the screen, take a selfie with Leland, and get those up on Instagram for a chance to win spots in Varsity Tutors after school clubs and autographed copy of Leland's book. But with all that, Leland, the whole theme is that an astronaut's answering questions today. Are you ready?
I am ready. Countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go, Brian. Let's have a great time. Hello, everyone out there. I hope you had a great holiday too, but let's get these questions going, Brian.
All right, perfect. A quick tour of where we're going to go. We've got some loose categories defined here, although we'll interrupt with even cooler questions as they come up. We have a lot of questions about what it's like to be an astronaut, so we'll start with the astronaut experience. A lot of questions about the science behind going to space. We're going to answer some questions about those. We've got questions about how to become an astronaut. I know a lot of you guys want to do that. And questions about space exploration in general. So let's break into it. We're going to start with the astronaut experience. And Leland, my first question for you, all your questions that you guys had about being an astronaut, what that experience is like. We're going to start with the first one. Leland, what is it like to be in space? Everybody just wants to know, what's it like up there?
Oh my goodness. To be in space is like being free of gravity, right? But granted, when in space, you do have gravity, but we're falling around the planet at 17,500 miles per hour. So it allows you to float. And when you push off of something, you're floating. But remember, anything you've dropped, anything that you've misplaced, everything is floating around you. So you have to make sure that everything has Velcro on it. See this Velcro on my wrist? We have Velcro on everything so we can stick it to the wall, stick it to the floor. It doesn't matter. Floor, ceiling, wall, sides, it doesn't matter, because you're floating and you're moving and you're turning, and you can work upside down, right side up. It doesn't really matter. And when you eat your food, we're going to talk about food in a minute, right, Brian? But when you eat your food, people can like throw food to you, or you can just suspend your food and float to it. We're going to show you some really cool videos of what it's like in microgravity in a minute. So space is fun. Space is cool. A lot of floating, but also a lot of securing of your stuff so that you don't lose it and bump into things and damage things. So you got to control your body really carefully.
Excellent. It's where it helps to have been a former professional football player with all that kind of training out there. Hey, you mentioned food. Everybody wants to know about the food. There's a couple other big themes you guys had, and it was really cool to see. Everybody wants to know just sort of the day-to-day, how do we do normal human things? So let's talk a little bit about big question. What's the food like in space? What do you have to think about when you're eating in space? Does it taste good? What do you get to eat? Let's talk a little bit about that food.
Yeah, the food in space. Remember now, in space, you're eating stuff that's floating around, like I just said. But in space, you sometimes lose your taste buds get desensitized. So you don't even taste, sometimes you don't even taste things that need to be spicy. So on the ground, they take the food and they dehydrate it. We call it dehydration of food. They put it in plastic bags. And then when we get to food up in space, we have this needle, it's called a septum, and we stick it into the plastic and we rehydrate the food. So the food goes from being shrunken down and dehydrated, just like if you left your broccoli out in the sun and the water all evaporated out of it. Now you see this picture. And now I was trying to tell Elmo what these packages of food look like, because this is, I think, some cream spinach, and he wants to understand, how do you eat food in space? So you hydrate it, then you put it in the heater and heat it up. Some foods are like meals ready to eat, like what the military uses. So you just cut into it and eat it. And then we have the spiciest stuff that we like is shrimp cocktail, because like I said, your taste buds sometimes get desensitized. And so shrimp cocktail has that horseradish sauce in there. And the best dessert is, oh my goodness, chocolate pudding cake. Think about it. Chocolate, pudding, and cake all combined into one thing. And you always use a spoon in space, because if something starts floating away, and this is the picture of one meal that I ate on the space station. This was one entire day's meal. We had, I see some crackers, some nuts. We had apricots. There was chicken. We had like green beans with almonds in there. And that bag that I'm holding to my mouth, that's actually, you put water into that just like you do in your food, and then you mix it up, and then you put a straw in there. But that straw has a lock on there, because if you just left your straw on the liquid, it would just start bubbling out. You have, liquid everywhere. So after you, slurp your liquid in, then you put on that lock to keep it from floating away. So that's kind of what it's like to eat in space, rehydrated, dehydrated, meals ready to eat, chocolate pudding cake, good stuff. Brian, I think you would like the food up there too.
As a kid, I was eating astronaut ice cream every chance I got, all those kinds of things.
Okay, wait a minute. We don't have astronaut ice cream in space. We don't eat that. We eat real ice cream, because we have a little freezer up there that we can bring up ice cream and actually put it. And actually, I brought some up on my second mission. I brought ice cream to space for the guys up on the space station, the guys and the girls on the space station, and they didn't give me one bit of it. They said, "You're going back home in a few weeks. We're up here for 6 months." So they ate all of the ice cream.
I guess if they're going to be up there that long, that's okay. At least, your dreams got dashed. All the stuff I ate as a kid, I think, was marketed as astronaut. It wasn't really, but I enjoyed it anyway. There. Yeah. Tang. It is up there?
Yeah, but it's called orange flavored drink.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, the brand names. NASA's got their own kind of a thing. Very cool. And I know before class, we were talking about one of the reasons they dehydrated is you just don't want to carry all that weight of the water in your food, right? It takes so much energy to get, we talk about rocket science in a little bit, that just anything you can do to trim down the amount of weight you have to spend, send up, you can add water when you get there, which leads me to my next question. The most popular question everybody had, I think you've gotten this, sort of, I guess, the corollary to what goes up must come down, what goes in must come out. What's it like to use the bathroom in space, and what should we all know about it?
Wait a minute. I thought we were talking about food here. That's like anti-food.
That's step 2, right? That's what happens to food after. This is a biology class, but yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, in space, you have to be very careful when you use the bathroom, because here's the deal. Everything floats. So if you're doing number 1, we know what number 1 is. Everyone has their own color-coded funnel. So there's this hose that comes up, and you put your funnel on it, and then you do your business into the hose, and it's a vacuum that pulls the liquid down and puts it in this storage container. Now for number 2, it's a whole another world. The toilet that you sit on has these levers that come up onto your thighs and these straps for your feet, because when you think about propulsion, we're going to talk about rocket science in a minute, but when you think about propulsion, that's propulsion. So if you're using the bathroom, number 2, and something's coming out, you would be a rocket ship going off the toilet. So you have to strap yourself down to make sure that you don't become your own personal rocket ship while you're using the bathroom. And then you have to clean up everything, put on gloves, make sure nothing's floating around. And we have this elbow bag that we stuff everything in after we use the bathroom, make sure everything is sanitary, because you want to stay sanitary in space. Nothing floating. Right, Brian?
That's really amazing. I didn't expect to get that lesson in jet propulsion today, but that's why we ask astronauts the question. Do you guys know what really happens up there? Hey, speaking of everything floats, There's some fun things that can float. I know we just sent over a couple of videos. One of the other themes, hopefully everybody knows here, we got a lot of really cool, never before seen videos of Leland's activities up on the International Space Station. What can you tell us about the fun of weightlessness? It just seems like you guys are having a blast up there. Is that really true? People wanted to know, like, what do you do to entertain yourself? You're finally weightless. You know, you get a couple days in your case to be able to do it. What kind of things do you do to enjoy that?
You know, you work really hard in space because it's a mission to build this International Space Station that's up above my head. But you also have to, you know, blow off some steam. So for us, the two things that are really fun are to look out the window, see the planet, but also to use your water bag and float water bubbles and then put things in them and eat them. So here are some M&Ms that I had floating around. And if you look, you see the same straw. Now I have it unlocked that was in my other picture with the food. Now there's Dan Tani. He's my buddy. He's eating a tortilla, peanut butter tortilla with M&Ms, his dessert and his food at the same time. But now if you look down at what I'm doing, I'm pressing the bag and now the water bubble's coming out. Dan's throwing M&Ms in there. So there's about 2 M&Ms. You think about Newton's laws. Okay, now here we go. I'm going to try to drink this. Oh my goodness. I drank the whole thing. 3 M&Ms, water bubble. But the only problem is I almost choked to death because there's too many M&Ms. We also took the NFL Super Bowl coin for the 2010 Super Bowl to space, and we did a coin toss. And so the 2 commanders, Jeff Williams and Charlie Hobaugh, the space shuttle, he was a Marine, so he was Navy. The other guy was Army, so AFC, NFC. I'm showing them both sides of the coin. He had to choose heads or tails. So once they chose, I flipped it, but the coin just kept going up. It didn't stop. And so we had to figure out who was going to get the ball first. So we did rocks, paper, scissors. You guys know rocks, paper, scissors. So the guy with the scissors are getting crushed by the rock. And so we had to do it again because he didn't follow the instructions. And now the paper covers the rock. So Scorch won. He was my commander. Now we had to go find that coin. We floated up to the top of the space station and I hit my head. So don't do that. Make sure you know where you're going when you're floating on the space station, or you can hurt yourself or knock out equipment, but just push off very slowly and you can move ever so gently and not hurt yourself or hurt anything else. So that's microgravity in space. That's floating in space. That's playing with your food, but also flipping Super Bowl coins that came back down and were flipped at the Super Bowl in 2010.
I love that coin flip video. Of course, it's not going to come down. You're quick to improvise on that, and just really fun to see. Just things are different than you would expect out there. So that was quick thinking for sure. Hey, speaking of quick thinking, a lot of people wanted to know about, okay, we've seen the fun that goes on in space. What happens if someone gets sick? We know that, low gravity can impact your body. So what are some of the things you need to be thinking about when your body goes up to space and it's interacting with, gravity in a totally different way? And what kind of precautions do you guys take in case someone gets sick in a place far from home with low gravity and all those things?
Yeah, well, on the space shuttle, when you go up, you have to have someone who's had medical training. Now, I am not a doctor on the ground. I just play one in space. I went through and had lots of training. I trained at Methodist Hospital in Houston. You see me there working on a cadaver. We learn how to take blood, do blood draws, to do suture things up. We have a medical checklist that, basically if something happens, the doctors have thought of everything. So we go to the checklist, and if there's no communication with the ground, then we step through the checklist to make sure that we cover everything the person needs. If someone gets their face gets stuffy from all the fluids, think about it. In space, the fluids migrate to your head. So it looks like you have, like kind of an elephant head. Your eyes get puffy and things get bigger. So in space, we give people antihistamines to kind of make that swelling go down. And so I was the guy who had to give out the medication. So I learned what people wanted, what they needed beforehand. And I had that, also if I had to give someone shots and put them to sleep or whatever, I was that guy. So you have a medical checklist, And Brian, you have someone who's been trained to be basically the doctor in space if you don't have a doctor on your mission. So that's how you take care of everyone if something happens. Lacerations, cuts, bruises, broken bones. A lot of times, one of the things that happens in space is things float and get in your eye. So how do you generate an eye wash station in space? You want to flush out that particle so that it doesn't affect your vision, because you need your vision in space too.
It really is incredible to think about. It's just a whole different thing. Your body's not used to, like your body's used to it, blood will flow downward easily and you got to pump it back, like all those things that we take for granted. And it's amazing that, that NASA's figured all that stuff out. So you guys can be pretty healthy up there. I guess a follow-up question to that. Some people I think had heard you talk about this in one of your previous classes. Did you ever get sick in space?
Brian, I did get sick in space. And the funny thing was, when I got to space on my first mission, they tell you if you want to take the medication or not take the medication, the anti-sickness medication. And I didn't take it because I wanted to get a good idea of if I needed it or if I didn't need it, And so we got to space, I ate a ham sandwich, and then I floated kind of down on the middeck, and I had this hat on, and I didn't feel sick, but it just started coming. And so you have these in your shirt, you have these bags. They're called emesis bags. We call them, they're like barf bags, really. And you pull them out and they try to hit the bag. The bag has cloth on it, so you can actually do your business. And then you can pull the cloth and wipe your face and put all of it into the bag and seal it up like a baggie. Well, when I went to do my business in the bag, I think the bag was like this, and my mouth was over here a little bit, and the stuff came out and hit the top of my hat. And I'm sitting here looking up at the commander and the pilot with this veil of stuff from my body floating in front of my face. It was the craziest thing. But the cool thing is I didn't feel sick. So basically, got a glove, wiped it, tried to stuff it in the bag, wiped myself up. And I said, hey, put me back in the game, coach. I was ready to get back in there because I didn't feel sick. But some people actually feel sick to the point where we had to strap them down, basically put them to sleep so they can kind of sleep off that sickness. And you have to then do their task. So you have to be able to, we call it pinch hitting in a minute. You have got to be ready to help someone else if they're not feeling well, or do a task that you weren't assigned to do, but because you all work together as a team to get the mission success, which is the win, like in sports.
Man, that's really incredible. And at least you saw, we've got some great questions coming in. Please, everybody, keep your questions coming.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Fortunately, one of the ones I just saw actually was on that. Yeah. Was there a time that you think of where you had to think really quickly in space, that it was something you hadn't trained for? It was picking up somebody else's job. Can you tell us about a time? Sounds like a job interview. Can you tell us about a time that that you just had to think really quickly on your feet to solve a problem or cover for something that was unexpected?
Well, take a look at that space station right there. I was in the space station working the controls for the robotic arm. There are two hand controllers. And if you look, I think it's right. Yeah, it's right there. The robotic arm. I was moving the arm and I had someone on the arm holding a payload. And their foot plate that was holding them to the arm was turned in the wrong direction. So we knew that when we extended the arm way out, that they wouldn't be able to put that in place because they'd be in the wrong position. So we had to think quickly, because when you think about doing a spacewalk, you have this white suit on and it's like you're on a little spaceship. You have your water in there, you have your oxygen, you have your CO2 scrubber, you have a visor, you have heaters and coolers. So it's like you're on a spaceship, but you only have so much oxygen to breathe. So if I extended my friend all the way out to the edge of the space station to install this part, but he couldn't put it in place, then he'd have to come all the way back with it on. We might run out of time for his oxygen. So we temp stowed it. We got Rex, who was doing the spacewalk free floating, to actually help turn that boot plate, get them in the right alignment, grab the payload, and save the day. So that was a kind of a critical thing because mission control was thinking about what to do. But while they were thinking, we were losing time. And we thought on the fly, we got it, made it happen, and saved the day. So that was my quick thinking space station story on my first mission, STS-122.
Man, that's incredible. And it is, you and I have talked about a decent amount, just you have to prepare for quick thinking and think of everything that could go wrong because, you're a long way from home. It's all those parts are expensive. Everything's really dangerous if it doesn't go well. So it's impressive, the amount of, we're going to talk about training in a second because we've had a lot of questions about that. But Leland, I know you wanted every once in a while, I said, hey, everybody's asking me questions. It's only fair that I get to ask them questions. So I think it's time. We've been talking for a while for you to ask one of your questions to the crowd out here. So let me pop that up and we'll see what everybody has to say.
Yeah. So my question to all of you guys out there, guys and girls, why do you want to be an astronaut? And what do you want to do, see, and discover? Let me hear what you got to say out there. Send your questions. Send your answers. I want to hear what you have to say. Let's see here. So I think some of you are saying, let me look at pull the chat up here. Some of you are saying you want to see the Earth from high above. Well, when you're looking at the Earth from high above, you're 240 miles up. You're going around the planet every 90 minutes, seeing a sunrise and a sunset every 45. So that's what you see when it's up on high. See what it's like in space. Okay. Search for aliens. How many of you believe there are aliens in space out there? I thought I saw an alien, but it was really a frozen ice that looked like it had the shape of a body, but it was just ice. Discover a new planet. We're always looking for new planets. And we just sent up a new space telescope called the James Webb Telescope. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Feel what weightlessness is like. Kind of told you what you'd feel like using the bathroom in weightlessness, eating your food in weightlessness. What else? Visit Mars. We have a rover on Mars right now called Perseverance, and it's looking for signs of past life or life. So maybe you could be that astronaut that goes up and checks out what Mars is going to be like and see the rings of Saturn. So those are some of your things that you want to do, want to see, want to discover, and reasons why you want to be astronauts. Good questions, good answers.
Yeah, it is really neat. So we love hearing your questions. We also love seeing what you have to say when Leland asks you guys some questions. You guys have some amazing dreams and aspirations. We're going to talk a little bit. So a lot of you guys wanted to get technical a little bit too. Of like, hey, we know space is fun, but what does it take to get there? How do I prepare to get there? And let's talk a little bit about the science behind it. So in this next section here, what we want to talk about is kind of just rocket science. How do we get there? You guys had a lot of great questions about that. Leland, I guess the first one for you is a lot of people wanted to know, how do we get rockets off the ground and into space? But then step two is, how do we land them so precisely? Like when you docked with the International Space Station, you're going 17,500 miles an hour, but you had to make a perfect landing. When these kids go to the moon and Mars with the Artemis program, we're going to need them to land safely. How do we get off the planet and then land gently where we want to be?
So in this picture, that's a great question. In this picture, you see on the right side, 6 of us standing by our space shuttle Atlantis. There's a huge orange tank. It's called the external tank. It has liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen in it. And though that fuel is actually what feeds the 3 main engines that help get us to space. The other 2 white things that are there are they're called solid rocket boosters. There's solid propellant inside of that. And that propellant is lit along with the 3 main engines. And that gives us this thrust. It's a thrust that goes downward and it makes us lift up in the air. And so there's something called the rocket equation that relates the change in mass over the original mass. You'll learn about that at one point, but that's what gets us up off the planet. And we have to travel at 17,500 miles per hour to get into what we call orbit. And this orbit around the Earth is where the International Space Station is right now. It's about 240 miles up from the planet. And we have to catch up to it. So we launch from Florida. Our space shuttle takes off And right before we lift off, the space station goes right overhead. We have a 5-minute window for us to try to catch the space station. The second part of your question is, we get into orbit, we're doing our thing, we dock to the space station, we save the day, do the mission, but now it's time to come home. We're going 17,500 miles per hour. We undock from the space station. We turn the space shuttle around in the direction that we're traveling so we can light these big engines called OMS engines, orbital maneuvering system engines. And they fire to slow us down. So the faster you go, the higher orbit you go, the slower you go, the lower you go. And after we do that deep, we call it a deep orbit burn. We're orbiting, so we're going to deorbit. We do the burn, and then about maybe 90 minutes later, we're landing back in Florida. And so we do, it's called orbital mechanics, where we target where we're going to go, and then we target where we're going to land. And as a space shuttle, you have the ability to do this cross tracking around where you're landing and land. We got SpaceX, we got Blue Origin, we got the Artemis program. Some of them have capsules, some of them have like airplane looking rocket ships. And so there are different ways to do it, but the future is going to be, with the Artemis program, will be a capsule coming back, just like what happened in the Apollo program. There'll be 4 people in that capsule. It's going to land in the ocean, I think, like SpaceX with parachutes. So that's how we get to space, and that's how we come home. Great question.
It's amazing. And you know, I'm sure, you know, you can tell everybody there's a lot of math that goes into that. There's a lot of physics that goes into that. So if you want to be part of the Artemis program or space programs out there, there's a lot of room for people who understand, particularly math and physics, and all kinds of science out there. So we're going to get into how you can become an astronaut here in a second. Another question a lot of people wanted to know, Leland, is, you spent time, you're up on the International Space Station twice. It's, what you say, it's the most complicated structure mankind has ever built, humankind has ever built. How did it get built? It's behind you there. It's massive, but we can't take cranes and dump trucks and all those kind of things up there. How did the International Space Station get built, and what was your role in that?
That's a great question, Brian. The space station, it took 30 trips by the space shuttle. The space shuttle has a cargo bay. I think we want to show the picture of the station and the shuttle for a second right there. Can you show that picture? It's like, you know, we dock to the space station, and then we have, so that payload that's sitting to the right, that canister looks like a Coke can, that's called the Columbus Laboratory. And I actually used the Canadarm2, the robotic arm, to actually grab that out of the payload bay of the space shuttle and attach it. So it's almost like each mission, there was a different Tinker Toy that you were adding to your Tinker Toy contraption. And 30 different missions, 15 different countries were contributing to building the International Space Station. The Germans, Russians, French, the whole gamut of people working together as one team, as one family, to build this orbital outpost that's been going on for many, many years. And so we got a space crane up there, Brian, no dump trucks, but the space truck is the space shuttle. And that allowed us to get up to space. For some spare parts and some consumables like water and food, we have some resupply vehicles that are autonomous. So we launch them, and they can dock to the space station, or we use the robotic arm to grab them and attach them and unload them, and then we send them back, and they burn up in the atmosphere before they come home.
It really is amazing that you know, people were able to do that. Really cool that you were such a big part of putting that together, and we all know you as our teacher here with the Varsity Tutors StarCourse series. So thank you for that. And I think we've got time for maybe one more chance for you to ask students questions, because we want to know about what rocket science they're going to need to be able to figure out. So let me get that up here so you can ask them another one while you collect your thoughts.
All right. So here's the question for you. As the Artemis generation, Artemis is going to be the first woman and another man getting back to the moon, to live on the moon this time. And you're that generation. You're going to be going up there. your job is to set up a space base on the moon. What are some of the things that you'll need to figure out as you're going through this journey to get to the moon? Let me see if I got some of your answers already coming in. Brian, I think they're coming in. So we have to figure out where to get oxygen. Definitely. Got to breathe. And not just in your spacesuit, but in your lunar base. How to keep oxygen in there. How to grow food. Exactly. We're gonna take food up there, but how do we become self-sustaining on another planet or another, on the moon? Temperature without atmosphere. That's a great answer. Where do we get water? How do we get water? That's critical. How do people get there and back? Okay. We just talked about rockets going up and rockets coming back down, but we're looking at building another little mini space station that's orbiting the moon so we can shuttle people from the surface up to that and then bring things back and then go home. So that's another thing we're gonna have to do. Hospitals, schools, grocery stores, parks. How do people live a normal life? I didn't see anyone say anything about our pets. What about our dogs and our cats living up on the moon? Anyone ever thought about doing that? Because I got 2 dogs that would love to go, Brian.
That they wouldn't be the first, right? That was sort of the early Russian programs were sending dogs up there. So we know a few things, but want to make sure we can keep them safe for the long term. But yeah, it wouldn't be a moon base without mankind's best friend up there along with us. So more challenges for everybody to figure out, which I guess leads to our next section here. Everybody wants to know how to become an astronaut, and that's what we'll be talking about here. We want to talk about astronaut training a little bit. We want to talk about the criteria for becoming an astronaut and all those kind of things. So let's start here. First question for you, Leland, on this talk track is what were some things you did as a kid that helped you become an astronaut? What are some things, and by virtue of that, what should kids today be thinking about doing to help get on their journey?
That's a great question, Brian. And I think the biggest thing for anyone aspiring to be an astronaut is to be curious, is to be an explorer. I mean, wherever you live, you can go outside and go to a park and turn over a rock and see the bugs and things under it and kind of classify them and understand what they're doing, to build things. When I was a kid, I built a skateboard. My parents didn't have a lot of money, so I figured out how to buy, got a job to buy the trucks and found some scrap wood and went to the shop and made my board, put the wheels and trucks together. So as astronauts in space, we can't call the Maytag repairman. We can't call someone to come and fix something. We got to figure out how to fix it ourselves. So learning how to use tools, learning how to solve problems. I wanted a skateboard, but I didn't have the money. So I figured it out. Creating things, knowing science, being curious about how things work. When an apple falls off the tree, what speed is it traveling? What acceleration is it traveling? Force equals mass times acceleration. So there's physics, there's science, there's all these things that you're going to be learning to help you become an astronaut. And that's what I did as a kid. I built bicycles, skateboards. I played the piano. I even had a chemistry set where I created this explosion. Don't do that, okay? But it fueled my curiosity to be a chemistry major. And I worked with materials and, just did different things and worked at NASA. So be curious, learn how to use your hands and your brain to build things, to explore, and to solve problems. Because that's really the biggest part of being an astronaut is to, when things are good, everything's great. But when things go wrong, you've got to figure it out because you're far away from home and you don't have a lot of people. People are on the mic, but if you don't have any communication, no comm, then no one's there to help you but yourselves. You got to figure it out.
Yeah, it's one of the things I've always taken away from all your classes is they're sending you and your team to do a mission. Everything's about the mission. So they're sending people to space who can accomplish things, who can get the job done, even if things don't go perfectly. So thank you for all that. Another really common question actually is about the application process. So let's get specific a little bit. How does someone become an astronaut? Are there specific schools you need to go to, things you need to major in college? Where do you apply? How do you apply? One of my favorites was, can you apply more than once? Do you have to apply more than once? What's it like applying to become an astronaut?
So in this last astronaut class, I think there were 12,000 people and 10 were selected to be astronauts. That's a 0.018 chance of becoming an astronaut. I said it's hard, but go for it. You apply on a NASA website, USA Jobs, and you put in all your qualifications, everything you've done. The main things that people have done is science, engineering, medical doctors. I think we have computer scientists, but mostly geologists. So those are things you have to study, be a scientist or an engineer. And most scientists or engineers become doctors, right? And be curious, know how to build and create things. Vision, you can go to the NASA website. I don't remember if it's 2020, if it's 20 something corrected to 2020, you can actually wear glasses. You can have LASIK these days. You have to be in good, fairly decent shape, to be able to, run away. If the shuttle, something happens to the vehicles, you can run away, get to the escape pod and get down from the tower. Vision, sight, hearing, decent shape, and have a technical degree. And those are the things. I think you have to at least have a master's degree with 3 years of work experience and a PhD with 1 year work experience. But you can look all that up on the NASA website. Just Google, how do I become an astronaut on the NASA website? And they will give you everything you need. They even have, different classes you should take, possibly if you're going to be certain things. And then we never say what university you have to go to. We just want you to be curious, do the things that you love. Because if you love something, and if it's in that criteria, then you'll be one of the best candidates. So make sure you do what you love in science and engineering and math and so forth, and then apply to become an astronaut.
It's great advice. And I think, one of the things I love hearing you say, geologists, think a little bit about what jobs are they going to send people to the Mars, the moon and Mars to do. And it's try and look for what can we learn from the rocks and the soil that will tell us about, was there life there before? Where's a good place to set up, a base camp kind of a thing. And so if you're thinking about the kind of jobs we need or to set up, camps, they're doctors, how does all this affect people's bodies? It's kind of helpful to think about what are the jobs that they're going to want you to do. The other thing I always take away when you talk about it is NASA wants you to apply. It's not some big secret. And I think that's helpful to know too, is they want curious people, hardworking people to apply. So they're going to try to find those things for you. What one other one I really love that came in here is, are the criteria changing for the Artemis program versus, the shuttle program in the International Space Station? What can you tell us about it? Is it becoming different what they're looking for in astronauts over time?
The thing for the shuttle program, you had, short duration. So you had a mission that was about a week or 2 weeks. And so on a short duration mission, if people didn't really get along, they could probably figure it out for 2 weeks and make it home safely. But if you're in space for 6 months or 3 years, if we go to Mars, that's a 3-year mission. So it takes you about a year to get there. You have to wait until the Earth and Mars are perfect. Right now, the Earth is, I think, 220 million miles from Mars. Its closest is 33 million. And that's when we launch, when it's almost the closest. But if you're gone away for 3 years with someone that you can't get along with, it's going to be a really long mission. So we want to make sure that people have the right, the personality, the demeanor, that they have the technical skills, that they can work well with others. We talk about play well with others. And that's really important because you don't want to be in space with someone that you can't get along with. And so we look for people that have, good ways of teaming together with other people from all around the world. We fly with people from all around the world. Good question, Brian.
Yeah, thanks to all of you guys out there have amazing questions. So you're being curious, which is as a, an astronaut, thing you should be thinking about, good mindset to have. Everybody's so polite in their questions too. So everybody's being a good team player. We got a lot of future astronauts out here, which I guess leads to another question everybody wants to know about is, what is astronaut training like? How long does it take? How hard is it? And what's maybe something that might surprise us that you guys do in training that we might not think of?
Yeah, the astronaut training, I trained for 10 years to go to space. And when you get into the astronaut corps, you start right out doing land survival training. You're going out to figure out how to, if you have to eject out of your airplane, how do you live off the land until someone can come and save you? Water survival, how to live in your raft with the water and all that stuff. How do you live and work in there until someone saves you? And then you do systems training. You train in the systems on the T-38, the jet. You train in the systems for the space shuttle. Now they're working in the SpaceX vehicle. They're going to be working on Orion and the Artemis program. So you learn how to do very detail-oriented systems training. You flip this switch, the heaters come on. You flip this switch, the mechanical systems come on. So knowing how to do that. A lot of them are autonomous now. How to take care of yourself in microgravity. We get in a zero-G airplane. We fly parabolas that give you 25 seconds of weightlessness. You're flying like this, like a roller coaster in the airplane, 40 parabolas. So if you get sick on the first one, it's a long flight, but you can do it and you figure it out and your body gets acclimated to it. So how to take care of myself in microgravity? How do I take care of all my things that are floating around me? And then we do book training. We have to take tests, test on the different systems, test on the different rockets, test. And then we do exercise. We lift weights, we run, we ride bicycles, we work out. Cardiovascular shape is very important. Your heart, your cardiovascular system, your muscles. In space, we have to exercise for 2 hours. Free weights, basically the equivalent of free weights. And then cardiovascular. We have a bicycle, we have a treadmill, and we have resistive exercise. And so that we also think about nutrition, eating the right food so that we have, good health in space. And then we do exploration on ourselves. We're guinea pigs. So we study our eyes and our brain and our nervous system and our heart. Our heart gets smaller in space because it doesn't have to pump as hard. So how does that affect you for a mission for 3 years? We need to understand all these things. So being a guinea pig, Brian, you're getting sticked and poked and prodded, and you have to figure it out because long duration, it gets much more difficult down the road when you're in space for 3 years versus 2 weeks.
That's what I think all of us all of you guys that are going to become astronauts one day should say thank you to Leland right now, because he went through all those tests so they could figure out what happens to people in space so that when you guys get to go hang out on Mars for a while, we already know what to expect. So Leland's crew of astronauts did a lot of that so that you guys wouldn't have to go through all that. So, hey, while we've got an astronaut here who's been to space, who's studied space, who's prepared to go to space for 10 years, people had some really great questions about, just sort of like, what do you know about space? What's amazing out there in space and all those kind of things. So last section we've got here, and again, everybody keep your questions coming so that we get as many of these answered as possible. We just want to know a little bit about space exploration. What's out there? What are we thinking about? And I think that one of the number one questions we get on that, Leland, is do you believe in aliens? Do you think we'll discover alien life anytime soon on the Artemis mission with the James Webb Telescope? What can you tell us?
I think if we're the only ones here in the universe, right? Many people say that's a lot of wasted space if there's no one else out there. So that's why we're looking out there. We just launched this new James Webb Telescope. It's 100 times more sensitive than the Hubble Space Telescope. Hubble Space Telescope was about 340 miles up from the planet Earth. This telescope will be 1 million miles away from Earth in this orbit called L2, which is between the sun and Earth. And when you think about looking back in time, if you think about a telescope, it's basically a time portal. It gives us a look back in time. The Hubble telescope gave us a snapshot of the galaxies that were forming 100 million years after the Big Bang. No, 400 million years after the Big Bang. The James Webb will give us insight 100 million years after the Big Bang. So it will let us see further back in time. And it's in the infrared. So if I had an infrared camera on you I would be seeing how hot you are, how you're glowing, if your eye sockets are cooler or your face is cool or warmer. So we'll look at the light that's coming from solar flares and stars, collapsing into black holes and all these things. And when you think about massive black hole in the center of our galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy, it's so dense. And you think about, how dense is the sun? I mean, how massive is the sun? Anyone ever heard of nonillion? I was having to put together my own little cheat sheet right here for, you got million, billion, trillion, quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion, septillion, octillion. Nonillion is 30 zeros. So when you think about the mass of the sun, it is 4.3 nonillion. So 4.3, 30 zeros, right? Now, if you think about our planet Earth is 333,000 times, the sun is 330,000 times as massive as our Earth. Now think about a black hole. This black hole is so dense, that black hole is 4 million times more massive than our sun. These are some of the things that are out that we're going to study with the James Webb Telescope, that you're going to study as you become explorers, as you look out there, as you find out these new things. And maybe we'll find out some aliens that are out there. Maybe they're not aliens look like us, but maybe they could be microbes in the oceans. They could be on a moon, an Io, this planet, this Iowan moon. It's nothing but lava and sulfur. It's this yellow sulfur and fire and magma coming out from hundreds of volcanoes that are erupting all the time. So these are some of the things that are out there that you're going to explore. And Brian, I think we're getting close on time, but I'm getting really excited about telling our future explorers about what's out there that they're going to be exploring and developing and finding new things. And the James Webb Telescope times 2.0, they're going to be building it with their science and engineering technology.
It really is an amazing time that everyone's going to get to see. I think, we got to see in our lifetimes, International Space Station, for I'm not quite old enough, the moon landing and all those kind of things. They're going to see, people go to Mars, the James Webb Telescope, and that's going to help us build a better telescope in 10, 15, 20 years, all those kind of things. So a lot to come with. Hey, let's make sure we have time for at least one more. People have been asking amazing questions, but you mentioned an infrared camera. I think everybody's got normal cameras. I totally forgot to get us our selfie moments. Let's make sure everybody gets a picture before we run out of time. Then I want to be able to ask you at least one more here. So we're going to get everybody on screen here. Make sure Leland gets ready for that, because somebody will get 1 nonillion likes on their Instagram. You guys put these up on Instagram and tag Leland Melvin and Varsity Tutors. You got an opportunity to win an autographed copy of Leland's book, Chasing Space, and a spot in Cosmic Adventure Club with Varsity Tutors. Hopefully you guys have those cameras ready, and Leland, let's get those pictures.
All right, on countdown of 10. Okay, let's look up this time. We're going to look up and point to the sky, maybe up to where the James Webb Telescope is. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Look up. All right, that's the first one. And now we're going to look straight at the camera, big old smile. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I think we got it, Brian.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone. Post those pictures to Instagram, Leland Melvin, at Leland Melvin, and at Varsity Tutors. And we're going to get you, one of you are going to get this book from me. And actually, you're going to get an astronaut patch also.
Excellent. So many cool reasons to get those pictures up there. I will, on the way out, make sure we've got those exact handles on the screen, so you don't make any mistakes. As we talked about, you got to be prepared for anything out there. Hey, last question for you, Liam. We'll leave on a high note here. 2022 is going to be a huge year for space exploration. Everybody here has so many things to look forward to. If you were a young astronaut, if you were, applying to be an astronaut, kind of starting right now, what would get you most excited about the future that lays ahead for all the young astronauts that may be building on what you did? If you were a young astronaut, what one thing would you be most excited that's going to be coming in the next 10 or 20 years?
All right. Send your answers to that question. I want to see what you got to say.
Yeah, we'll see what students say. What are you guys excited about going to see? And then Leland, we want to hear your answer here as well. So we'll get those answers coming in. We'll hear Leland's answers, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right. I think the most inspiring thing right now is that with the technology that we have, with we have these cell phones, we have these, everything is getting miniaturized and getting faster. I think you're going to be able to explore some things that we've never been able to explore before. Virtual reality is going to give us insight into how we can actually look at different planets and different things in our solar system. And the way that we connect and communicate, we've had to communicate over Zoom in these different ways because of, what's been going on, that we're going to have more people getting together to brainstorm, different people from all around the world, to solve problems, to find out things about, maybe we'll find out things about aliens in space because so many of you are getting together to solve these problems and to talk together. So, and the other thing is, you are so excited with such enthusiasm, and our future is really bright with all of you future scientists, engineers, and people that are going to explore and help our planet continue to prosper. So that's what I'm excited about, Brian.
There's a lot of reason for optimism. I didn't think about, collaboration on Zoom and with things like Varsity Tutors, Cosmic Adventure Club, and, all the different Artemis challenges that are out there at the NASA website and everything. We're unlocking more and more brain power out there to solve some of these problems. You guys are not just going to be part of an amazing future, but you're going to drive that amazing future. Exactly. Thanks to people like Leland for inspiring and making sure you know exactly what your mission is. So, hey, with that, Leland, happy holidays and have an amazing new year. And we'll see you back here soon. Everybody else out there, thank you for amazing questions. We'll do this again because there's too many questions to fit in one of these. So keep the questions coming. Stay curious. Thanks to everyone for all of your questions and everything out there. And we'll wish everybody a happy new year and see everybody back here soon.
Happy New Year.